Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
I've always been a stickler for details, especially when it comes to my finances. It's a trait I picked up from my dad, who used to sit at the kitchen table every Sunday, meticulously balancing his checkbook. "Every penny counts," he'd say, and those words stuck with me. So when I decided to switch my cell phone carrier this past July, I made sure to dot all my I's and cross all my T's. I'd been with my old carrier for years, but their rising prices and subpar customer service had finally pushed me over the edge. The switch went smoothly, or so I thought. A few weeks after making the change, I got a notification that my old carrier had issued me a credit. Great, I thought. At least they're being professional about it. Little did I know this was just the beginning of a ridiculous saga. Come August, I received a bill from my old carrier for 1 cent. Yes, you read that right. 1 single penny. At first, I laughed it off as a clerical error, but when I tried to log into their website to sort it out, I realized I no longer had access since I wasn't a customer anymore. Slightly annoyed but determined to resolve this, I drove to the nearest store of my old carrier. The young guy at the counter looked at me like I was crazy when I explained why I was there. I told the employee I had received a bill for 1 cent and wanted to pay it. He looked at me and asked if I was sure about the amount. I confirmed it was indeed for 1 cent and showed him the bill. Still looking confused, he asked how I wanted to pay. I offered him a choice between cash or my debit card, pulling out my wallet. The employee chuckled, probably thinking I was pulling his leg. But when he saw I was serious, he shrugged and processed the payment. I left the store feeling satisfied. September rolled around and guess what showed up in my mailbox? Another bill for 1 cent. At this point, I was beyond frustrated. It wasn't about the money, it was the principle of the thing. And that's when I decided to have a little fun with it. I walked back to the store, this time with a plan. The same employee was there, and he recognized me immediately. The employee greeted me with a look of dread, guessing correctly that I was there about another 1 cent bill. I confirmed his suspicion and explained I wanted to set up a recurring payment. He asked if I meant a recurring payment for 1 cent, but I corrected him, saying it would be for 3 cents. The employee, looking even more confused, asked why I wanted to pay 3 cents. I explained my reasoning. I'd pay this month's bill next month in advance and add an extra cent for good measure. Trying not to laugh, he asked how long I wanted this recurring payment to last. I told him it would continue until I got tired of it or until they fixed their billing system, whichever came first. The employee looked at me like I was either the most patient or the most petty person he'd ever met. Maybe a bit of both, but he set up the recurring payment as I asked. Before leaving, I requested that he make a note in the system explaining why I was doing this. He sighed and agreed to add a comment but doubted anyone would read it. I told him that was okay, as it would make me feel better. October came around and I received an email notification. Apparently, I now had a credit of 2 cents on my account. But true to my word, another 3 cent payment was scheduled for the end of the month. I know what you're thinking. Why go through all this trouble over a few cents? Well, it's not about the money. It's about sending a message. Every time they process my tiny payment, it probably costs them more in transaction fees than what I'm actually paying. It's my way of saying, hey, big corporation, pay attention to the little details. They matter. Will they ever notice? Who knows? I am no longer a customer, no longer bound by their terms and conditions, yet still engaged in this penny war. As for how long I'll keep this up, well, that depends on them. Maybe they'll finally fix their system. Maybe they'll reach out and ask me to stop. Or maybe they'll realize that every customer, every transaction, no matter how small, deserves attention and respect. When I got home from work one evening, I was tired after a long day at the factory, and I just wanted to relax. But as soon as I pulled up to my house, I noticed something was off. My car wasn't in the driveway where I'd left it that morning. At first, I thought maybe I was losing my mind. Did I park somewhere else and forget? But no, I clearly remembered leaving it right there in my own driveway. That's when I spotted a note taped to my front door. I walked up and read it, my blood starting to boil as I took in the words. Your vehicle has been towed for violating Homeowners Association parking regulations. Please contact the HOA office to arrange retrieval and pay associated fines. They towed my car from my own driveway. How was that even possible? I stormed over to the HOA office, ready to give them a piece of my mind. When I got there, I was met by a woman with a pinched face and a look that said she'd rather be anywhere else. I'll just call her Karen since that's what she acted like. I angrily asked her why my car was towed from my own driveway. Karen calmly explained that my vehicle was parked on the street, which violated their parking regulations. I insisted that my car was in my driveway, but Karen maintained that their records showed it was on the street. She told me that street parking was reserved for larger vehicles that couldn't fit in driveways. I argued that this was ridiculous as my driveway was empty and my car fit just fine. I told her they had no right to tow it. Karen assured me they followed all proper procedures and suggested I could file a formal complaint if I wanted. She then told me I needed to pay the towing fee to get my vehicle back. I was fuming, but I knew arguing with her wasn't going to get me anywhere. I grudgingly paid the fee and got my car back, but I couldn't stop thinking about how unfair and ridiculous this whole situation was. That night I tossed and turned trying to figure out how to fight back against this injustice. And then, around 3 a.m., it hit me. If they wanted to play games with parking rules, I'd show them just how absurd their little power trip could get. The next day I started making calls. It took some doing, but I finally found what I was looking for, a decommissioned Chieftain tank for sale. It was going to cost me my entire savings, but at that point, I didn't care. This was about principle. A week later, my new purchase arrived. I'll never forget the looks on my neighbors' faces as a massive military tank rolled down our quiet suburban street. I parked it right in front of my house, making sure it was perfectly aligned with the curb. It wasn't long before Karen from the HOA came storming over. Karen demanded to know what I was doing, insisting that I couldn't park the tank there. I calmly asked her why not, pointing out that it was a vehicle that didn't fit in my driveway, which was exactly what street parking was for according to their rules. Karen, clearly flustered, threatened to call the towing company right away. I told her I'd love to see them try to tow a 60-ton tank. Karen's face turned red as she sputtered and fumed. She threatened me with fines, legal action, and everything else she could think of, but I stood my ground. I explained to her that I wasn't breaking any rules. I reminded her that street parking was for vehicles that don't fit in driveways, and my tank certainly didn't fit in my driveway. Over the next few days, the HOA tried everything they could to get rid of my tank. They called the police, but since I wasn't breaking any laws, there was nothing they could do. They tried to pass new regulations, but I pointed out that they couldn't be applied retroactively. The best part was watching my neighbors' reactions. Some were angry at first, but as the story spread about why I'd done it, many of them started to see the humor in it. After a month of this standoff, the HOA finally caved. They admitted they had made a mistake in towing my car and agreed to revise their parking regulations to be more reasonable. They also refunded all the fines they'd collected from other residents for similar violations. As for my tank, well, I decided to donate it to a local military museum. Now, whenever I park my regular car on the street, nobody says a word. And if I ever catch sight of a tow truck in our neighborhood, all I have to do is casually mention how much I enjoyed owning a tank. It's amazing how quickly they drive away after that. After finishing college with a degree in IT, I was ready to settle down and buy my first place. At the same time, my mom was looking to reinvest in real estate after a disaster with her previous condo. The fire had destroyed the building, and instead of rebuilding, the condo association decided they wanted more parking. Talk about priorities, right? So, there we were, both on the hunt for property. Our realtor, bless her heart, knew exactly what we needed. One early morning, she called with news of a fourplex that had just hit the market. It was seriously undervalued, and with the housing market on the rise, we knew we had to act fast. We put in an offer right away, no inspection, basically cash. It was a risky move, but sometimes you gotta roll the dice. And let me tell you, we hit the jackpot. The location was perfect. Our side of the street was all historic homes that had been renovated to within an inch of their lives. The other side? Let's just say it was the wrong side of the tracks. Student housing, rentals, and enough crime to keep the local police busy. I moved into one of the units. Not the best one, mind you, but it was home. We had an interesting mix of tenants, a couple of students, a hippie, and two professional women who kept insisting they weren't lesbians. Their words, not mine. Everything was going smoothly until we started getting these weird complaints. At first, I thought maybe one of our tenants was throwing secret ragers when I wasn't around, but every time I asked, they'd deny having parties and instead point out that the real wild parties were happening 2 houses down on the other side of the street. This went on for a while, and we had no clue who was behind these mystery complaints. Then came the night that blew the whole thing wide open. The two not lesbians, seriously, that's how they described themselves, were hanging out on the front lawn with a couple of friends. They had this ancient boombox playing some tunes, barely audible over their conversation. Nothing crazy, just a chill evening. Suddenly, the cops roll up. Apparently, someone had called in a noise complaint, and it wasn't even 10 p.m. yet. Somehow, it slipped out that the neighbor 2 houses down was the one complaining. You know, the same guy who kicks his kids out to play in the backyard at 7 a.m. every weekend, while the rest of us are nursing hangovers. One of the not lesbians decided enough was enough. She set up a meeting between me, her roommate, and the complaining neighbors. My girlfriend, now wife, tagged along too. The meeting started off tense. The neighbor couple sat across from us, all prim and proper. They started by describing our area as a nice, high-class professional neighborhood for raising kids. They accused our tenants of disrupting their peaceful community. I responded by listing off the professions of our tenants, pointing out that we had a law clerk, an IT professional, someone working with disabled folks, and an artist. I also mentioned that some were students, arguing that this sounded pretty professional to me. The conversation went back and forth like this for a while. They kept insisting we were the source of all the noise and denied sending any nasty letters. Then the husband lost it. He started yelling about how we were just renters who would be leaving soon, while they actually lived there, and it was their home. Everyone on our side started laughing except me. I was too shocked to laugh. I calmly told them that I actually owned the building. You should have seen their faces. They went from red to white as sheets in seconds. After a bit more back and forth about how we weren't the ones causing trouble, they left with their tails between their legs. The cherry on top? The two not lesbians stayed in their apartment long enough to see those nasty neighbors put their house up for sale. I guess they couldn't stand living next to us renters anymore. We did make one change after all this drama. We instituted a new rule that any party involving kegs had to include an invite to the entire complex. It was our way of saying, if you can't beat 'em, join 'em. I realized how lucky we were with that impulsive purchase. Not only did we get a great property, but we also built a little community. Sure, we had our share of entitled neighbors, but in the end, we came out on top. I was always the quiet kid with my nose buried in books. My parents had high hopes for me, dreaming I'd be the first in our family to go to university. And I did make it, but not without some bumps along the way. My girlfriend and I go way back. We were in the same class since primary school, but we only started dating in our final year. She was always the go-getter type, knew exactly what she wanted to do with her life. Me? I was still figuring things out. After graduation, she jumped straight into the police academy. Said she wanted to make a difference in the world. I was proud of her, but it also made me feel a bit lost. I eventually decided to pursue a degree in computer science, hoping it would lead to a stable career. University life was different. I ended up in this run-down student house in an area that had seen better days. The rent was cheap, which was perfect for my tight budget, but the neighborhood had a reputation. It was the kind of place where you'd think twice about walking alone at night. One evening, my girlfriend came over after her shift. We had a quiet night in, just catching up and watching some telly. Around 10 p.m., She said she had to head home because of an early morning shift. I walked her to the door, giving her a quick kiss goodbye. When I was watching her walk down the street, I noticed a car slowing down beside her. At first, I thought nothing of it, but then I saw the driver roll down his window. My girlfriend shouted at the driver, telling him in no uncertain terms that she wasn't a prostitute and to leave her alone. I was shocked to hear this exchange. Some creep thought my girlfriend was a prostitute. I was about to rush out there myself when I saw her stop and reach into her bag. My girlfriend then told the driver to leave the area immediately. The man in the car tried to persuade her, saying he'd make it worth her while. My girlfriend then revealed she was a police officer and warned him that he was attempting to solicit prostitution. She flashed something at him, must have been her warrant card. The car sped off so fast you'd think the devil himself was chasing it. I ran out to check on her. I asked if she was okay and what had just happened. She calmly replied that it was just another day in the neighborhood and assured me not to worry, mentioning that she had gotten his license plate number. Confused, I asked what she planned to do with the plate number. She hinted mysteriously that the curb crawler would soon learn a lesson about respecting women. The next day, I got a text from her that made me snort with laughter. She told me about visiting the creep from the previous night at his house with his wife present. I asked what happened. She explained that she had told him to come to the station for an interview about curb crawling and described his wife's shocked reaction as priceless. I agreed that he deserved it and hoped it would deter him from cruising our streets again. My girlfriend then revealed that the man turned out to be an important figure at a local company. She mused about how embarrassing it would be if his colleagues found out. When I asked if she planned to tell them, she assured me that wasn't her style, but added that the man would likely be anxious for a while, fearing his actions might become public knowledge. My girlfriend had turned a potentially dangerous situation into a moment of justice. It made me realize that while I was still figuring out my path in life, she was out there making a real difference. The incident became a turning point for me. I started taking my studies more seriously, determined to make something of myself. I also got more involved in campus safety initiatives, sharing our experience, anonymously of course, to raise awareness about the issues in our area. As for the curb crawler, we never saw him in our neighborhood again. But every now and then, when we pass by that street, my girlfriend and I share a knowing smile. It's a reminder that sometimes karma has a badge and isn't afraid to use it. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.